Microtransactions seem to be a very hot topic these days, and I wanted to share my thoughts on the subject as I really need to vent my frustrations. When I hear companies like EA, Warner Brothers, Activision etc. adding in loot boxes or pay-to-win options within their games, it really makes me completely downhearted about the way the games industry is going. Before I continue and really let my feelings on the matter fly, I would like to say that in principle I would opine that loot boxes themselves are a form of gambling. My idea of gambling is betting your own money on an outcome that, if positive, will end with you receiving a monetary prize. Loot boxes in games currently do not follow this description exactly, but it's pretty fucking close. Most loot boxes provide some form of loot, however, if you don't receive the loot you want, high-powered weapon, armor, upgrade etc., then it feels like a loss. You have essentially thrown your money down the drain, much like gambling. Chasing that special piece of loot can be a big problem for some people. Another way to look at it is that publishers have moved towards a way of allowing gamers to cheat if they have the money to do so. This clearly renders an unfair advantage to a large group of the gaming community, and in my opinion lies one of the main reasons for the outcry. There is also something to be said about the gaming companies. You would have to be very naive to believe the EAs of this world, saying that gamers want loot boxes and that this type of multiplayer experience is where gaming is headed. Huge corporations like EA/Activision, in my opinion, have an obligation to promote a fair and level playing field for everyone to enjoy. If people know that going in, then their experience would surely be a positive one, and in turn would mean more people would want to purchase their game. Don't get me wrong. These companies need to make a profit to continue making and publishing games, but I ask the question, why not make the best game possible, great story, great graphics, great multiplayer experience, and simply sell more copies of the game? DLC would probably sell more if gamers knew the original game was fantastic and that they were going to gain a similar or better experience. Skyrim seems to be doing okay 6 years later, faced with stuck-out tongue and winking eye. Another point of disappointment and frustration recently is with the PR department at EA. I would like to say I have zero experience in PR, but even a complete moron can see they have dropped the ball. I read recently that EA were reassuring stockholders that the loot boxes would not affect profits in any way, $3 billion wiped off stock value according to reports online. This brings me to my second question. Why include them then? A further question asked by a lot of people online was, why not make the boxes cosmetic like last year's Game of the Year Overwatch? That's how you do loot boxes. EA's reply: no one wants to see Darth Vader in pink. Well, no shit, Sherlock. Would be funny though, but we would perhaps like to see him dressed as Anakin from SW, EP3, or even a distressed version of Vader. Different colored lightsabers etc. It's definitely doable. Further to this, I recently read and that the head of Take-Two doesn't view microtransactions American Samoa gambling and was happy to include them in all future releases. How much cash has GTA 5 brought in again? I agree, as a rigid definition of gambling it might not be, but they are sure as hell happy to take advantage of as many people as possible who aren't that well equipped to deal with a process that is similar to gambling. You may be thinking, yeah, if you gamble, you're old enough and ugly enough to know what you're doing, and if you develop a problem, then it's your problem fix. My issue is that gaming is for all ages, but children/young adults are a huge part of the market, and for me most of them do not know how to control the urges that come from playing video games that utilize the pay-to-win microtransactions. I have witnessed firsthand teenagers playing FIFA and COD etc. and the loot they can buy online to get ahead of their friends. It is like a drug to some of them, and many can become affected by it in an extremely negative way. Watch some YouTube videos of kids having tantrums losing games of FIFA after probably spending a month's pocket money on player packs. It can be funny initially, but taking a step back it does point towards a deeper problem. I can hear the voices, "I'm fine BTW," of people. It's the parents' job to monitor their child's video games, and to those people I would completely agree. Although I'll ask another question: how many people do you know who have kids check the rating on a game before buying it? How many parents don't flinch when their child says, "I need £20 for in-game credit or loot boxes etc.? EA and companies who sell microtransactions are at fault for including them in their games, but I also don't know many who question their child when it comes to video games, and that's something that needs to change. I'm imagining that some people are thinking I has gone off the deep end, but I would genuinely like to think that as a somewhat developed part of society, parents, gamers, developers, publishers should all be singing from the same sheet. At the end of the day, I feel that this is just the tip of the iceberg, and the gaming industry that I have loved for over 30 years is going to suffer for it, along with a lot of young and older people alike. Oh, and EA, tell your chief financial officer to keep his mouth closed in the future and let someone who knows the audience to speak from now on. Below is an excerpt from a statement made by Blake Jorgensen, EA chief financial officer. Blake Jorgensen described the canned Star Wars title, Visceral, as a much more linear game that people don't like as much today as they did 5 years ago or 10 years ago. This to me is just an EA corporate lackey deflecting the bad press about microtransactions by trying to enlighten us poor stupid folk that microtransactions are something that people want. There are many linear story-driven games that have been published in the last 5 or 10 years that people have adored, sold well also. The Last of Us, Uncharted series, Tomb Raider, Wolfenstein, the list goes on. Metacritic is full of them. All of which I may add have not had or required microtransactions to enjoy them. I would like to end by saying that on principle I have not purchased SW Battlefront 2 and won't be in the future. This is probably the one and only way a big company like EA will sit up and listen. Hurting them financially is the only way they will look towards change. On the flip side, I do feel for the workers for the development of Battlefront and other games that are heavily reliant on microtransactions. No one wants to see anyone out of work, especially people who have families that rely on them. I will start to wind my rant down by saying this to any publisher who is considering or has already approved and asked for microtransactions to be included in a game. Please think carefully. There is a lesson to be learned here. Ask yourself a question. I like asking questions if you hadn't noticed. Do you want to be remembered as a company who has the best sales figures of all time, or do you want to be known as the company that makes stunning games that transport a user to new worlds, allowing them an emotional experience unlike anything else they have experienced? Video games can be that experience, and in addition will probably sell by the bucket load. Think. Thanks for tuning in to Phantom Lord Gaming.